So in about 5 minutes, we're going to get started. Before we do, it's just our local audience here. I wanted to kind of let people know that we are going to be live, also broadcasting to the Eugene City Club. So be on your best behavior. I think I heard that. And also, we have cords on our mics for change. So during the Q&A session, bear with us. And if you have a question, I'll be roving in the audience and kind of raise your hands, and I'll point at you and either pull you aside so we're not standing in front of the camera, or we'll figure something out. But bear with us on that, okay? I don't think you are. Would you like to be? So I'll ring the bell and get us started in about 4 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Central Oregon and of Eugene. I'm Bill Buchanan, and I hold the highest office that the Central Oregon City Club has, which is that of member. I'm filling in today for our president, Dave DeRose. He and I have a little back and forth over how the bell should be rung before we begin our meetings, and so I'm trying to demonstrate to him it needs to be rung a little bit louder. He does everything else way better than I could possibly dream of. Today, we're here for part 2 of the 2-part series called Collaboration Defeats Confrontation in Malheur. And it's presented in partnership with the City Clubs of Central Oregon and Eugene. And as part of this new collaboration, we're appearing live to the audience in Eugene and obviously live to our audience here. I'd also like to thank a number of people here. If you hold your applause till the end, thanks to Charlotte Gilbride and Central Oregon Community College, our partner in higher education and workforce development. Thanks also to Central Oregon Daily for supporting this event. If you miss a forum, you can watch recordings on cotv11.com or on the City Club of Central Oregon website. Thanks also to KPOV for supporting this event and broadcasting our events. If you're listening to this event, I'm the really, really young one. If you're here live, you know better. Today's moderator is Joel Corin. He's the past president and current member of the City Club of Eugene. Joel spent nearly his whole life in southern New Jersey. He practiced law for 40 years, serving on the boards of a legal services facility, a synagogue, 2 county bar associations, and the New Jersey State Bar Association. In addition, for 30 years, he taught trial advocacy at Rutgers Law School as an adjunct professor. He and his wife, Callan, retired to Eugene in 2011 to be closer to their kids and grandkids. Please welcome Joel, and let's get this started.
Thank you very much. If I look a little nervous, it's post-traumatic stress disorder for being in a chemistry classroom. The worst experience of my academic life occurred in chemistry classrooms. So please forgive me. City Club of Eugene is grateful to the City Club of Central Oregon for collaborating with us on this special program, and especially to Joey Drucker, the indefatigable executive director, and for all her hard work in putting this together. 2 weeks ago in Eugene, we had part 1 of this program about the occupation and how the decision makers and the community responded. The speakers were Professor Peter Walker, Judge Steve Grasty, Sheriff Dave Ward, and editor and historian Pauline Brayman. If you missed that program, you can see it on the City Club of Eugene Facebook page. Professor Walker's book, The Sagebrush Collaboration, details both the occupation and, more importantly, the collaboration and the collaborative forces that helped defeat the collaboration. And there's Peter Walker right now. And you can get this book for free from the Ford Family Foundation. Go to their website, you can order it, and they'll mail it to you. Today, we're dealing with the collaborative process and the High Desert Partnership. Today's discussion by the panelists will deal with entirely the High Desert Partnership and the collaborative process, and questions will only be asked that deal with that part of the topic. Today's program is being live streamed back to Eugene and to anybody else who wants to check in. Our speakers today are Gary Marshall, Chad Cargis, and Brenda Smith. We were also supposed to have Dan Nichols. I could probably introduce these people, or we could have a program. Because their resumes are so full of accomplishments, I've decided to shorten the introduction and get to the program. Gary Marshall is board chair of the High Desert Partnership and was a founder. He is with Broken Circle Company, a rancher and a business owner, and he has been on the board since 2007. He's a 5th generation Marshal in Harney County, and with the exception of college and military, spent his whole life there. And Chad Cargis is one of the other co-founders. He's on the executive team of the High Desert Partnership. What he asked me to say in his introduction is, retired with 35 years of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, 20 years at Malheur National Wildlife Reserve, and co-founder of the High Desert Partnership. But I also have to tell you that he was he's been the director of the supervisor, rather, of the Malheur Refuge since 1999, and spotted the fact that the relationships between ranchers and the government agencies was not going well, and then worked to form the High Desert Partnership to change that. Dan Nichols was supposed to be here, but had an unfortunate incident with a horse, and he's now healing. But typical of Dan, he's always thinking of collaboration. He said, healing ribs is like collaboration, painful but worth it. And I'm sorry, and you should be sorry, that he's not here today. Brenda Smith is the executive director of the High Desert Partnership, and her interest in collaboration work started years ago, and she even trained in facilitation when she was teaching at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in the 90s. Her various experiences, from starting her own farm to conducting agricultural research to developing outreach products for land managers, help her understand the complexities of working in a partnership. And now I'll turn it over. Chad is going to be first. Gary's talking first. As I said, Gary's talking first.
Joel? More? Higher? Higher? Okay. Thank you, the City Club of Bend and the City Club of Eugene and Peter Walker for making the arrangements for this. And I am Gary Marshall, and as Joel said, I am the 5th generation or 7 generations of my family there in Harney County right now. My wife, Georgia. I have an older son, Colby, a daughter, Marley, and a younger son, Tanner. My wife, Georgia, she always says her claim to fame is the historical fact that her great-great-grandfather was the man that shot Pete French. And I don't know if any of you are knowledgeable of the story of Pete French. And actually that event started the whole process of what eventually that area turned into Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. So if that would have continued on, then that land potentially would have remained in private ownership. And so that's her great-great-grandfather, Ed Oliver, set things up to be as they are today. Today, we're going to talk with you about the High Desert Partnership. We're not going to be talking a whole lot to you. We're just going to go back in time long enough to kind of fill you in on how it began and why, and some of the accomplishments of what we're doing today. But important thing is, I think we all feel on the High Desert Partnership is we had a maybe somewhat unique origin story, a history, but it's important what's going on today, and it's important on what's going to happen from this point forward. Pardon? Are you having trouble hearing me? Okay. Is that better? Okay, I'm sorry. So, taking back in time, before before 2000, let's say, there's been there's a long history of interaction between local people, primarily ranchers, and Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, and sometimes things went very well, and sometimes they went very badly. But there was always situations coming up, and there was always problems working them out, coming to solutions. So, you know, and I've been involved with that for a number of years, and family before me had. But up until 2000, the solutions things were always followed the same path, more or less, and were a problem. Well, we thought about that a lot, and then refuge management did some changing, and Chad came on staff, and one of the biologists was there. We got to doing a lot of talking about this particular thing, and all agreed that nobody liked the process of the way these outcomes were, were developed, and so we want to do something different about that, and so there was this in our minds there was a need to do it differently, and the reason is because it was tearing the social fabric of the community there, and it was nobody was ever happy about the way these final decisions were brought about. And you know, oftentimes there was litigation, and you know, there was winners and losers, and the winners would be pleased with the outcome, and the losers would just wait for the next chance because they knew it was coming again. So we're all dealing with very large landscapes, whether you were on the refuge or a local landowner. That's big country over there, and we knew we had to do things, solve issues on a large scale. So we started more and more bouncing these ideas back and forth, and we decided to reach out to other areas and see if there was anything going on that we could use as an example of a better way. And so we called in a organization from out of Montana called Blackfoot Challenge, and worked with them. Chad and I went up there a few times, and so we used that as somewhat of a template, but could see at the same time that there needed to be more to it than what they were doing up there. So we needed to include more of the community, the social, the economic parts of it in order to really make it work. And we began reaching out to people within the community and within a local community, and quickly understood that the community was larger than just local people and population. So we would travel the state and engage a lot of other people. And what we came up with is that the refuge was going to be doing a 15-year plan, and that needed to be, it was important that be done well. And we began to look toward that, and the people that we were talking with became interested in and excited, motivated in trying to produce a plan that was going to work for the wildlife and the community, and we learned a new word. It was that new word for some of us was collaboration. Things had never been done that way. So we launched into that plan and completed that, and then could see that that wasn't enough. We need to expand beyond that, and we began to form these other initiatives under the High Desert Partnership. And so some of our early successes were the Honey County Restoration Collaborative, and which is a forest initiative, and also a Harney Basin Wetlands Initiative. And I'll let Chad and Brenda talk to you some more about what else is going on with those. But there's been great success, and I think the important part that the real discovery that we made, and so many people made, that it's really quite simple. That there was a lot of hard work went into going to setting it up, building these relationships and trust among people. But when people get together in a room to solve issues, then respect is the primary ingredient that's needed, and listening, and just understanding other people's positions. And that was something that is really the main things that make the High Desert Partnership function, these initiatives work. I'm going to turn to Chad now.
So like Gary was talking about, this has been kind of a slow process to get us to where we are today. Gary and I started having these conversations back in 1999. And over a 6-year period or so, we built enough local support to try to launch something like the High Desert Partnership. So in 2005, it was when we created the nonprofit and formally had the organization in place. The organization, because of who we are, we're land managers, whether it be private or public, had a natural resources slant to it from the very beginning. Our interests were natural resource-based issues. And so we focused on things like Gary said, the Harney County Restoration Collaborative, which is dealing primarily with the timber issues in the U.S. Forest Service, and then the refuge with our comprehensive conservation plan. And so we've got a lot of things going on around natural resources, but as we got further into the collaborative natural resource conversations, we really realized that you have to be just as effective at working on social issues as well as the economic issues, because they're all intertwined. And so we've launched a couple of things in High Desert Partnership, and I'll say HDP to shorten that up. But we have a business entrepreneurial initiative that Brenda can talk more about. We also have one around youth changing the community. That's more on the social side. But then we have all these other ecological ones. But just because of who Gary and I were and how the organization kind of got started, that's why we have such an ecological focus. But we really are intentionally now trying to broaden beyond that ecological focus. And then through HDP, the long-term goal there is to start to intentionally link those different conversations. Many times, your economic conversations are occurring completely separately from your social conversations and vice versa. And so because HDP is then involved in all of those different kinds of collaborative conversations, through HDP you have the chance to come up with some linkages that none of us are even thinking are possible right now, which will create new opportunities and all kinds of different outcomes. HDP, it's really community driven, but I want to qualify what I mean by when I say community. Most people, when we say community, we mean our local community. When HDP is talking about community, it's all those that are engaged in Harney County, all the interested stakeholders. That is the community we're working with. And so we have people, from the west side of the state and Idaho and everywhere in between that are engaged in Harney County, and that is the community that HDP is trying to support. HDP's collaborative process is not something that will work for crisis management. And so what we try to do is identify those issues that are important but haven't quite yet reached that point of crisis. And then our form of collaboration is very effective at dealing with complex issues, building the relationships necessary to resolve those complex issues, and having people from different perspectives engage in that conversation is extremely important. So that diversity that often you see divide people around issues, we're using that diversity to come up with unique ideas and unique problem solving. And so that is what makes HDP successful, is the people and the relationships between those people and their diversity of thought and perspective.
The collaborative process, like I was saying, it's not a crisis management tool, but it does give an alternative to other tools that tend to divide people. Now, I'm not saying these other tools aren't, sometimes appropriate and necessary, but, when you go into mediation and negotiations, litigation, those types of tools that we usually try to resolve our issues with, usually that divides people in one way or another. You have winners and losers in those cases. And like Gary was saying, those thoughts and feelings are carried on into the next issue, and it just compounds itself. And so using this collaborative process where people come up with unique solutions to things that they didn't think they could solve, that carries on into the next process. So now what we're seeing in the community is the HDP form of collaboration is being used in other forums, even though HDP is not directly supporting those forums. The Water Collaborative would be one example. There's some things going on in the county government where they're using a kind of a similar process. And so it builds hope. And I think that's what's important about this. And it gives people different alternatives for the future. And so we'll talk more about it as we get into the question session. But I'll let Brenda talk more about HDP itself.
All righty. Let's see. There, I guess that's good enough. Well, thank you all for coming today, and thank you to both the city clubs for the opportunity and the ability to be here. I think you probably have recognized from both Gary and Chad that we are not used to giving presentations. We're really used to being in a room and having a dialogue and listening, really. We're really more about listening than telling. But here we are today to talk a little bit about High Desert Partnership. And as Gary said, in 1999, they learned a new word, collaboration. Really, that has moved and shifted to a culture of collaboration in Harney County. And we're not here to talk about the occupation, but many folks have credited the conversations that Gary and Chad started to repair some of the difficult relationships that have happened around the refuge and ranchers in 1999. Helped get Harney County through that occupation in a more positive way than it could have happened. A little bit about High Desert Partnership. We are a nonprofit. I think you got that. We're made up of a board of 11 dedicated, passionate folks that are from Harney County, but also not from Harney County. We have 2 board members that are from Portland. We have a couple of new board members, a young woman who recently joined the board who was raised in Harney County, went to school, has come back to work in the community, lots of great energy. She has a particular interest in business and economics, and I think you heard too that we're interested in sort of the holistic, making decisions by consensus in a holistic way. So it's just maybe not for the benefit of the land, but it's also going to take consideration of how it can impact the rural economy, how it might impact our youth in the community. And so we really approach collaboration in that way. We feel like there's a bit of a process that happens, and we're here to stand. So, you know, you have to stand for something. We stand for collaboration. So we're about the collaborative piece. We're not so interested in the decisions that are made, but we want them made with a diverse group at the table, looking at complex issues in a holistic way, and making decisions through consensus so we can move forward to the next thing, which is usually some sort of project or something good that's going to happen. So we like to support our groups through planning and implementation. So once decisions are made, we're still there with them, working through, hey, let's try this particular thing, and I'll give you a few examples in a moment, but work through this particular issue, and let's find some funding to do this project, and let's see how this project works, and then let's also evaluate if the project had the impact and the outcomes that we wanted to see. So we have a few fundamental beliefs around collaboration, and just a quick story about, we recently had, about a year ago, had a collaborative summit, the Harney County Way, in Burns, and one of our panel participants got up and he said, you know, I used to think that it would be great if I could just get all these people in the room, and, you know, and if I could just explain to them my point of view, everyone would be on board with it. and so in fact that's not necessarily how it happens. So really one of our really fundamental beliefs in collaboration is that it's about listening very carefully, and then understanding where the concerns might overlap and where your ideas might overlap with other folks that maybe not see the problem or the issue the way you do. Both Gary and Chad mentioned that this is not a fast process, so we really believe in sort of taking our time, doing things right, not right now. It is a lot about building relationships and trust, really recognizing the value of others. I think one of the things that Chad said is really important, that community for us is all people that are interested in Harney County. So if you want to come to the collaborative table around a particular issue of a collaborative initiative that we support, you're invited to collaborate. And most importantly, I think, is that we are advocating for the process, not the outcomes. So we're an organization that is set up to support groups, different groups, in collaboration. What does that mean? What does support mean? You know, it means that we usually have a staff person that is there to take notes and provide communications. Our communications coordinator is in the back of the room, Marla, and you know, that's a really key thing, to get information out about what the collaboratives are doing. We also have professional facilitation in each of our meetings. It's important that folks recognize that we are really being neutral. We're a neutral party, and we hire people that don't have a stake in what we're having a discussion about. I didn't actually finish my whole part about who High Desert Partnership is made up of, and that is, so we have our board, and we have five staff members. I came to High Desert Partnership about 5 years ago as their second director ever, and we've just really been seeing lots of interest and requests to have more collaborative conversations in Harney County. So we are in a growth phase and moving, you know, kind of looking how to continue to build our capacity at all times. Just a little bit around what, you know, some of our outcomes that have happened through collaboration. And it even feels weird for me to say it's our, our outcomes or our accomplishments, because it really is our collaborative initiatives, outcomes and accomplishments. But we have a Harney Basin Wetlands Initiative, and this is a group of diverse folks who have a particular interest in basically maintaining habitat for migratory birds on the Pacific Flyway. The Harney Basin is a critical stopover for migratory birds in the Pacific Flyway. The refuge is an important piece of that, as well as the neighboring ranch lands. So this group has come together around, what can we do to maintain and enhance that habitat. There's issues with Malheur Lake. There's an invasive carp issue that has really changed that lake from what was once a premier freshwater marsh with a lot of vegetation that birds feed on to basically a mud hole most of the time. And then there's this, and then these migratory birds also use the flood meadows that the ranchers are actually wintering their livestock on. And so, the saying is, what's good for the bird is good for the herd in these conversations. At any rate, the group has been working for a number of years. They have received some significant funding from Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. And High Desert Partnership is helping that group implement the plans to basically restore these issues that are happening with the carp at the lake and maintaining our flood meadows. What's also happening, so these linkings, right? So what's also happening is that through this funding, we have been able to hire summer crews. And these are local high school students and college students who, from Treasure Valley Community College, and that they either from Burns or from Harney County that are going to college, and so we brought them back for summer positions. So this is where the linking begins. So the Harney Basin Wetlands Initiative, they're really kind of focused on this ecological piece, but they're also impacting our rural economy and also providing career-connected opportunities for our youth. And that's how we can help these groups see this. Another example is our Wildfire Collaborative. So this is a group of folks that are primarily interested in sagebrush steppe and rangelands. Harney County is 10,000 square miles and 75% public lands. So our public lands, we are a big deal in Harney County. And rangelands and sage grouse and just big country is part of Harney County. So the Wildfire Collaborative is really interested in restoring some areas that have been impacted by invasive annual grasses. And this is really a big fire threat. So sort of the overarching goal is, how do we prevent catastrophic fire? But we know that there's also going to be a need to restore these areas. And they realize, so they've been working on these plans, they've been coming to consensus, working on consensus decisions on some pilot projects. And they realize there's a bottleneck for native seed. So Harney County is right in the middle of this sagebrush sea, and we have really no native seed source to reseed and restore areas that have been impacted by fire, and so again, so now we've actually secured some funding to begin thinking about a native seed cooperative. This could be a huge economic driver for our region and our southeast part of the state. We have a premier rangeland research station. We have producers who are actually faced with some significant and really serious critical water declines in our groundwater. We don't want, wholesale alfalfa farmers going out of business. What can we do to help, learn about alternative crops, and maybe this native seed is that thing. So that's just a couple examples of the type of work we're doing and how we're linking our different initiatives together. So in closing, I just want to say we're supporting a number of different initiatives. They're all based out of Harney County, but they're not all just, our partners are not just in Harney County. So we would love to have a conversation with you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to take the prerogative, since I have the microphone, of asking the first question. For those of you back in Eugene, you can text your questions to 541-728-3304. The question I have is, I'd like your opinion on whether or not what you've achieved in Harney County is reproducible elsewhere, and if any organization is studying what you're doing and working to help other communities do what you've done.
I'll take that for a moment. We feel like that there's some real commonalities between what we've done over there, and as far as problem solving, and what goes on everywhere. You know, generally, you have a situation that is high stakes, emotional, problematic. You have a lot of different factions involved with it, and people begin to form positions, and they want the outcome to be in their favor. And that's exactly what we had going on over there, situation after situation. And so recognizing that, then we took this approach. And as alluded to earlier, there has to be built, before you put a bunch of people in a room, there has to be built communications and respect and some knowledge of other positions and honesty and openness and all those things that go along with discovering. And so we really feel like it's reproducible. In fact, you can see these same kind of things on a national level as well as a local level that could use a better approach to solving than and so the answer is yes.
Can I add to that, Joel? So Joel, you also asked if there's anyone studying us. Yes, there is. And in fact, it was a good reminder because Marla asked me, yes. So the National Policy Consensus Center, this is really sort of our test run with this pamphlet or brochure. But they have spent the last year conducting a lot of interviews. You know, what is it? Is it really something in the water in Harney County, or is it what is it? And so there's kind of what are some of the things that we do, and when we say collaboration, what does that mean? So that's on the back table, and I just also want to add that we're aware of similar models of like collaborative groups, but what is a little bit unique, I feel, with High Desert Partnership is we are about collaboration. So it's not so much the outcome. So there's groups that will form and they'll be partners and they're collaborating, but they're about a particular issue. We're really trying to stand up the collaborative part and support the collaborative part. And that's what feels a little different to us.
And I'll add a little bit to that too, Joe. So, it's about a strong economy, stewardship of your natural resources and livability of a shared community. It's really about people, what we're talking about. And what makes it work is the people in the community. But you have to have at least a core group of individuals that really are setting their personal agendas aside and are focused on helping those other people find solutions. You have to find those key people in your community. That's what ultimately will make it work.
All right, we're going to open it up to the audience here in Bend for questions, as well as by text message if you're in Bend or Eugene or anywhere else watching on Facebook. You can text the number up here. It's 541-728-3304 with your question, and we'll kind of try to alternate between audience and text questions. We have a question up here. Bear with me. We've got a cord issue today.
I can come to you. I think everything. I'm supposed to look that way. Well, I'm actually asking them, not the camera. But so how about if I do this? So I think everything you said is amazing, and sticking to process, that was really helpful, that the point is collaboration, not the outcome. So I guess the question is, what I see get in the way over and over, year over year, in those kinds of things is ego. So can you give some examples how you're able to, I'm hearing that you manage the process, which is great. But in every process, you got some Yahoo comes in, thinks they're, like the guy that thought you just need to hear my opinion and then you'll agree with me, right? But I'm just wondering if you can give us some lessons learned around how to address that. You all seem like humble, generous people who are already open-minded. So how do you deal with it when you're dealing with stakeholders that aren't, I guess?
You do it?
You can start.
Okay.
I have some ideas.
There's always a diversity of personalities, and that you got to figure out a way to make that a strength. And one thing, like Brenda mentioned, we have professional facilitation. Those folks that are really good at their jobs, they're able to help you manage that. Not only actually in the room when you're actually having the full collaborative, but there's a lot of individual conversations that occur outside of the collaborative conversation that are setting things up for people in that room to be successful. And your facilitator is helping you develop that strategy for the one-on-one conversations as well as the group conversation.
That is an ongoing issue here. And as Chad said, a lot of the conversation is actually going on outside of the meeting. And what we found is that if there's a density, I guess, if you will, of people that get this collaboration, and if there's somebody that enters the scene and they don't, they just want to, they just want to get their point across and get their way, then you just let that run, and the people listen to them, and there's questions respectfully asked, and in time, then there's enough conversation goes on that can change. It might not happen at that particular meeting. This takes time. It takes a lot of time. It took a lot of time to form, but we had those same kind of personalities back then, and it's ongoing. It's just as important to work hard at this collaboration now as it was back in 1999 or 2000, because that hasn't changed. People are the same. Topics are just as hot, and it's just as important to get it right now as it was back then.
All right. Do we have a text
But
question.
Can I add
Oh,
just
one
one
more.
more thing? I do have a couple of things to add because everything they said is spot on. Those outside conversations, and then even recognizing if you can maybe pair somebody that is their peer in an outside conversation to help learn how, sort of how you collaborate. We do typically have ground rules set, and so if the facilitator really has to drop back and say, well, let me remind you all, this is how you said you would come into the room and have, how to collaborate. So each of our collaboratives are usually set within groups, so they're not a blanket ground rule statement, but it's like you've all agreed to come to the table this way and work this way, and that seems to help a little bit. But yeah, human nature is human nature. And I'll just say that yes, I think that High Desert Partnership is an organization of introverts unite. We have learned that collaboration is a way that we can get our voice at the table.
Thank you. We have a text question. The question is, does collaboration require that we be ready to lose something we want or need?
So I guess it may feel that way, but are you ready to lose everything, or are you ready to get something and move somewhere? And that's really the question you have to ask yourself if you're wanting to come to the table to collaborate. And a lot of times, a solution that came together in consensus is actually better than the thing that you thought you wanted or the thing that I thought I wanted. And it's pretty awesome when that happens. So.
That's collaboration is oftentimes confused with compromise, and it isn't. We don't look at it that way. Sometimes the parties don't get everything they want, but oftentimes what happens is there's enough exchange of ideas and thoughts and energy and synergy and all of that going on that the outcome is better than the what was originally hoped for, and that there is benefit to all parties. In oftentimes, in some ways, they hadn't even thought of going in. So that's where that's the spot where we try to get to, that everybody comes out with maybe even something better.
The Water Collaborative. So one thing that I think sort of one of our rallying cries around collaboration, and particularly in Harney County, is that if we can't decide amongst ourselves in our community, we will be regulated. And so if you're willing to stand on your spot and be willing to win or lose, you're not going to even have any voice. And I do think that has been, Harney County wants to have a voice, and they want to be at the table. They don't want things to be done unto them.
All right. We have a question here from Robin Holtman. Robin, by the way, was a speaker at City Club approximately a year ago on a forum that talked about collaboration and problem solving in her community.
So I know we're not supposed to talk about the occupation, but you were affected by that as an organization. I want to hear a little bit more about how it affected you. So for us outsiders watching it and our hearts breaking, seeing that your community was being hijacked and that the good work that had been done in building collaboration over decades was very fragile at that time. neighbors being pitted against each other. How was it that the relationships and trust that you had developed, how were they proceeding now as this national situation was occurring? And were you able to take your relationships and trust and actually, through your collaborative, and apply it towards the occupation to help bring people together in your community and afterwards as they try to heal? Is that question clear? Okay.
Do you want me to take it from the organization side? Okay. Yeah, so I'll start from the organization side. I'd been with High Desert Partnership about a year when the occupation happened, and really just trying to, figure out what we were doing, and trying to do fundraising and all of those things. And I would say we just had to trust that the relationships could continue. We really just had to lean on all the previous work. As an organization, I felt like we just pretty much had to be quiet. It wasn't the time to talk about collaboration, and we actually had board members who were threatened, and we did not need to elevate any particular people or anything. So I would say, as an organization, we were pretty underground at that point. It just didn't feel like the time that we could say anything about collaboration and the work that we'd done.
So, we can't talk about Harney County these days without talking about the occupation, and we realize that. But looking at it from my perspective, that been there all my life, this was basically 45 days of people that came to Harney County, decided that they wanted something different for that area than what was going on right now, without asking anybody like myself ahead of time all the things that were wrong. And so they just came and decided to impose that upon our area. And that didn't set well. But we did have, as a matter of fact, that was just, to a lot of us, we just took that as okay, this is just one more thing that's happening here. This is just another form of outsiders coming in and trying to fix what they think is wrong here. And so we took it personally, but we had this structure set up that we'd worked on for a long time, and it really went well. Brenda said that we, as an organization, we stayed low profile, but as individuals, we were watching this as very closely. It wasn't anything you could get away from. It was there all the time, and so we all had thoughts and feelings and discussions about it inside of our home, but we didn't take it on as High Desert Partners issue. And but just the fact that High Desert Partners was in place and that it worked hard and had some solid credibility in the community for people, showing that people could work together, I think made a huge difference in the outcome of that. I think it was key to the way that finally turned out.
So I would agree with Gary that, without the collaborative process and the relationships that were formed through that, it would have been a much different outcome. And there's no doubt in my mind. But the collaborative process didn't stop during the occupation. I remember coming to Prineville several times to hold collaborative meetings that normally we hold them in Burns, but it was a little bit busy in Burns. And so we were coming over here and we were holding our collaborative meetings. So those conversations did not stop. The other thing to recognize, yes, we weren't saying much during the occupation, but I can't even begin to count the number of interviews I've given. And it'll always, I really would focus on the positive things that are going on and the collaboration and the high desert partnership. How many of you ever saw that in the press? So the press were covering a story. They covered the story in a way that it generated interest. Collaboration doesn't generate a lot of interest. And so all the good things that are happening in Harney County were not covered. But they sure focused on the division, just like we're seeing now at the national level.
We have a text question. The question is, you mentioned making decisions through consensus. How does that look? Unanimous, majority, or what?
Yeah. It varies by the group. It's up to the group to decide what consensus means to them. Most of the time, it's total consensus. But there are some situations where you may have, an individual or two maybe that just are not on board, but the rest of the group continues to move forward. And so I guess it's structured in a way that an individual with a particular agenda cannot stop the whole process.
All right, I think we have time for, Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're stopping at 1. Okay, I think we have until 1:15, so I guess we'll keep going. Next question here from the audience.
Hi, just a quick question. So I've got complete respect for the power of collaboration, and who are you? Oh, I'm sorry, Nathan Hofkamp with Central Oregon Land Watch. And I've seen in different collaborative groups, both as an observer and as a participant, the power of the process. And as you said, Gary, a number of times, the connections, the personal connections and relationships with people. And I know I'm not the only former member of the Steens Mountain Advisory Council in the audience that have been involved in issues in Harney County and on the Steens. It's good to see Peter here too. But it was mentioned that 75% of Harney County is public land, and I think there's a similar percentage, plus or minus, in Deschutes County and a lot of the counties in Central and Eastern Oregon. So my question is a challenging one to you with respect, first of all, again, acknowledging the power and place of collaboration. And that is, it's a question around the limitations to collaboration, or the place of collaboration relative to laws and regulations. We, also need to foster respect for laws and land management regulations, administrative rules. And so my question is, I don't, myself, I haven't had much luck sitting down, not to be flippant, but sitting down with the IRS and negotiating about my tax bill. So, or collaborating with them and coming to consensus around what I'll pay. So I just want to ask you respectfully and honestly for your opinions about whether collaboration in any way or in some regards undermines lawfulness and respect for laws and regulations, or maybe just where one ends and the other begins, what's the place for both? And if I have time for a second question, it would be to ask you related, but what has been the role of the tribes in your collaborative processes?
Let me get this before you get a third one off. Yeah. Go ahead and answer the first one, and if we have time, we'll come back to the second one.
Okay, this is Gary. I'm going to let Chad actually answer that question.
That's what I was going to say.
But what I do want to say before that answer to that question is, because Harney County is has so big a percentage of federal, state, county lands, other than private ownership, then right from the beginning we saw the importance of engaging all those entities in, and have worked hard at it and found some difficulty in being able to comply to particularly federal laws of having participants in the collaborative process because of the fear that there was going to be, there was going to be somebody speaking for the government that that didn't have the authority to make agreements or to do things. But what we're really after is not for somebody to say yes, the government will do that, or no, that they can't or won't, but to be informed and to be connected with those agencies and entities. So, I mean, they're community, right? I mean, they're part of the Harney County community and the state community. So, so they can't be held away. They have to be included, and we work to try to figure that out and work with within the laws so that can happen.
I was hoping you guys would answer this, but so, we talked about collaboration as an alternative to other forms of solutions like litigation. And that's where you go to the strict legal sense. The laws provide the sideboards for your conversation. And so when we have these collaboratives, it's actually an opportunity, from the agency standpoint, to educate other people about these sideboards. And many times, because there's not that conversation, there's a misunderstanding about what the sideboards are and why. And so you have that opportunity for that two-way dialogue. It also gives the agencies an opportunity to understand where other people are coming from and their perspectives. And so you still have that framework, the legal framework, and you're operating within that legal framework. You're not undermining it, but you're using all the flexibility that's in the legal framework. When people are divided, they can't capitalize on the flexibility within the legal framework. It becomes very narrow. And then you usually end up in court, and the judge is telling you what is right and what is wrong. And when you're dealing with natural resources, social systems, the economy, those are all complex systems. They're not linear. And so you need to maximize your flexibility if you're going to be able to adapt and form creative solutions.
All right. I know we have a lot of text questions that are lined up. Oh, I'm sorry. Native tribes, that was the second question. You only get one before somebody else gets a turn. So we're going to go to a text question. Could you ask anyone on the panel, I guess this is to me, to give an example of a problem that was anticipated and how it was avoided by collaboration? So give us an example how this thing works when the rubber meets the road.
Do the CCP. You can do that. Or you want me to? Okay.
There's some collaboration going on for those of you listening by radio. We'll answer this question.
So the Mount Hero Refuge Comprehensive Conservation Plan, like I said earlier, when Gary and I started having this conversation back in 1999, that's what I was focused on, is how is the refuge going to come out the other end of this planning process with something that people support and the refuge has some chance of actually implementing on the ground, versus going into court and then just constant legal battles that basically take all the agency's time to implement, and you don't have any outside support for what you're doing. In the refuges case, Brenda mentioned Malheur Lake. That's one of those complex ecological things that needs to be resolved. It has, benefits internationally, but it's too complex for the refuge to solve by itself. Not only the complexity, the knowledge base that we need, as well as the resources to actually implement the solutions. The refuge didn't have that by itself, and so you need outside partners. So, when we went into the CCP, we recognized we need other people to engage for their knowledge, for their connections to resources. That is what was going to make the CCP ultimately successful, and that's what we did. And one thing we haven't talked about today that we have recognized is normally you'll see these collaborative processes, and especially in agencies around a planning process, but then it's handed off to the agency for implementation and the stakeholders disengage. Well, like I said, it's a dynamic system. You have to make adjustments, but the stakeholders aren't part of making those adjustments, and then you're right back to where you started as far as relationships go. So with our collaboratives, we actually keep those stakeholders engaged through implementation so that they learn with us how difficult it is to try some of these things. They learn what works, what doesn't work. So it's an ongoing conversation, and they help inform, what the strategy is going to be for the upcoming year. So they're part of the learning process that we're going through, and they're part of the success and the failures.
All right. We have another question from the audience. Here we go.
Hi. Oops. Dalton Miller-Jones with Restorative Justice and Equity in Bend, Oregon, and also with the Oregon Community Foundation, which I don't see anybody here. To your north, the foundation was able to give some support to the Blue Mountain Forest Product Group, which is also a collaborative. Are you aware of that? What I figured. So one of the things that I think was successful in that collaboration, they brought, of course, all the key stakeholders to the table, but there were certain outcomes that they were able to demonstrate, not just as a neutral facilitative process, but with some clear goals in mind, which is what are the benefits of a healthy forest for the timber interest, for the ranching and grazing interest, and for jobs and the continued vitality of communities. I was wondering, in your experience, do any of those outcomes make any difference, and can you not weigh those into your process? Was that clear?
Thank you. Why don't you take this one? I took the last one.
Well, I think as individuals and as board members and staff, those outcomes do matter, and maybe through the process of collaboration, the group can realize that those outcomes, that's really where they want to go with the outcomes. But I wouldn't say we're driving the collaboratives to those particular outcomes. Outcomes absolutely do matter, and I think that was what Chad was getting to, is that it's more than the planning process. It's through implementation and their understanding if they actually are going to achieve the outcome they thought they were through consensus. But as an organization, that's not where we're standing. We want the groups to be figuring out what those outcomes are going to be.
Outcomes are what we want, right? That's how we measure whether it's worth doing something. So the initiatives that High Desert Partners support are the ones that set the goals and decide the vision of how this is going to, and the outcomes it's going to produce. And we support them in funding, we support them in facilitation, in staffing, but they determine what the path is that they're going to take. They determine what the goals are that are going to be measurable, and they go for that and record that and keep track of that. So there's definitely achievements occurring there, and it is not outside of the High Desert Partnership organization and board, but it is a function of the initiatives that report to the High Desert Partnership. Does that make any sense? I mean, you're seeing the way the organization is. So, okay. Chad, do you want to comment?
All right, I think we have time for one more text question. Brenda, are the tribes engaged in your collaboratives? And if so, does their unique standing as a sovereign nation change the dynamics around the table?
Right. So the Burns Paiute tribe is part of our community. They have an enrollment of about under 150 tribal members. So it's a very small tribe. And then I think I recently saw on some demographics, it's skewed to youth. So they have a high number of youth in the tribe. So that leaves kind of few folks to collaborate. But they are particularly interested in, well, they're interested in all aspects, I think, of our community. They're, continually interested in, economic things for the tribe, natural resources. Their natural resource staff has always been a part of all of our collaboratives. They work with our Harney County Restoration Collaborative. They were part of the CCP process and collaborative. So across all of our collaboratives, they're involved. But we've recently been challenged by a funder to, what does it really mean to engage the tribe? The tribe's engaged, their staff's engaged, but they are reluctant to speak for the tribe. And so we've actually spent the last year with a number of basically just sessions with one-on-one tribal members. How can we be more helpful and collaborate better? And it's been a really valuable last 8 months. The sovereign nation piece is a thing for sure. I mean, they're their own government, and they have, they can come to the table. They can do all the intergovernmental things. But just this past week, the tribe a year ago hired their first economic development person, director, and she's explained to us how the tribe kind of looks at economics differently, and this is really kind of a new thing for the tribe. And but so just this past week, I actually met with Tracy 3 times around the work we're doing with our youth and our economics. So I feel like we're always learning, always trying to figure out how to engage better. There are lots of things, and we just gotta kind of work through and build those relationships. They are stretched very thin, though, in collaboration, and so we're trying to help them through that.
All right, thank you. We're out of time. I'm going to go back to Joel.
First, I'd like to announce that the Harney County story is going national. Professor Walker and Dan Nichols are going to testify before Congress on October 22nd on preventing another occupation, preventing another malheur invasion. Is that better? Okay. I'd also like to thank Professor Walker for paving the way for making this program possible. It's his credibility that let these people talk to me. These are good judge of characters and would not have talked to me otherwise. And I'd also like to thank our speakers for giving me the best experience I ever had in a chemistry classroom. Next week's program at the Eugene City Club will be Downtown Achievements, featuring Danny Brode, the Executive Director of Eugene's Planning and Development Department. He will explain why it's important to the whole community that we invest in downtown and describe the accomplishments of the past 15 years. And let's thank our speakers for a wonderful program. Bill?
Thank you, Joel. And I would like to announce our next forum for the City Club of Central Oregon. It is Extra, Extra, the News Change and Challenge. As you may know, we have a new ownership for the local print newspaper. And with that in mind, thank you all for coming today. We are adjourned.